to this week's insight on the Amara Fano resistance struggle with Mekdes, brought to you by TIKUR ANBESA Media. Stay tuned as we bring you the latest stories, in-depth discussions, and vital perspectives on this important movement. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates. Let's dive in. Fano forces delivered decisive blow to fascist Abiy Ahmed regime in Debre Tabor battles. In the area known as Alam Segir Forest near Debre Tabor, a heavy battle took place, resulting in significant losses for the fascist Abiy forces, including many killed and injured. Yesterday, the fascist Abiy forces attempted to enter Fano strongholds and launch a heavy attack using advanced weaponry. In response, Fano forces launched a counter-offensive, successfully neutralizing the invading forces. Reports indicate that several units of the fascist Abiy forces, including special forces and numerous security personnel, were defeated and scattered. It was also reported that the wounded and deceased member of the fascist Abiy forces were being transported back to Debre Tabor hospital using ambulances. Similarly, a mobile force of the fascist Abiy regime advancing from Debre Tabor towards an area referred to as Mokshe faced a decisive defeat during an ambush by Fano forces, resulting in further losses. According to the report, no damage or casualty were incurred on the side of the Fano forces, while the fascist Abiy forces suffered substantial human and material losses. Fano forces crushed Prosperity regime's military offensive with decisive counterattacks. The Prosperity Party's fascist forces continue their attempt to attack Fano in various areas. However, their movement are being met with decisive counterattacks from Fano forces, causing significant setbacks and demoralization within their ranks. The regime's mobile force, departing from their military camps, have been attempting to advance towards Fano-controlled areas under the guise of a coordinated offensive. However, these actions are constantly thwarted by Fano's defense and retaliatory operations, leaving the fascist forces in a state of disarray and defeat. Fano forces closely monitoring enemy movements have launched ambushes and direct confrontations, successfully neutralizing the regime's operational forces. The enemy has suffered significant human and material losses as a result of these well-coordinated counterattacks. The notorious General Panujuli's army, which have targeted Amara farmers and looted their properties, have also failed in its attempt to attack Fano. Defeated in open combat, the regime's forces are now abandoning their position, leaving behind weapons and equipment as they flee. Despite ongoing deceitful maneuver by the enemy in different locations, Fano forces are maintaining their momentum with well-organized offensive, targeting and dismantling the regime's key military units, including special forces and other elite squads. With their superior tactics, Fano continue to dominate the battlefield, forcing the enemy into retreat and inflicting heavy casualties. The enemy forces that enter Wallo Mekdela Woreda face a crushing defeat by Fano forces during a fierce battle. In Mekdela Woreda, Kabale 08, the security forces of Abiy Ahmed, led by elite and special units, suffered heavy losses after engaging in combat with Fano forces. Many of the enemy soldiers, including senior commanders, were killed or wounded during the counteroffensive. Fano forces, advancing deep into the enemy-held position, inflicted severe punishment on the regime's security forces, including 5 key officers. Numerous regime soldiers faced relentless attack and were neutralized in the operation. The Prosperity Party soldiers, armed with heavy weaponry, attempted to launch an offensive against Fano. However, Fano forces overpowered them, breaking their line and causing significant casualty, leaving many enemy soldiers dead or injured. The inability of Abiy Ahmed's security forces to defeat Fano in battle have been exposed, along with their descent into acts of looting and atrocities. After suffering defeat at the hand of Fano, the demoralized soldiers of Burhanu Jula have turned to attack civilians in areas under their control, falsely labeling them as Fano supporters. Reports indicate that they are terrorizing innocent people, conducting public execution, and spreading chaos. Despite their use of advanced weaponry and new tactics, the regime forces have been unable to defeat the Fano fighters. Instead, they have resorted to brutal measures against the Amara people, aiming to weaken their morale and suppress Fano resistance. The enemy forces, unable to achieve success on the battlefield, have committed widespread atrocity, targeting civilians, including women and children, under the guise of counterinsurgency operations. In particular, they have been looting property and executing Fano supporters publicly to instill fear. For instance, as previously reported, in South Gondar's Abinna town, 7 members of Fano families were detained in a military camp where 5 of them were subjected to brutal treatment and ultimately killed. Such actions have been reported across several regions under the enemy control, showcasing the systematic campaign of terror being carried out by the Prosperity Party's military forces. In South Gondar, including Abinna, heavy fighting has taken place across various areas, leading to significant losses for the enemy forces, as revealed in reports. Since a month ago, and up until now, intense battles have been waging in several locations, including around Abinna and Debre Tabor. According to sources, Fano has recorded many victories despite being lightly armed. The enemy forces, which have relied on heavy weaponry to launch attack against civilians, have reportedly been pushed back and overwhelmed during the fierce clash of the past week. Reports indicate that their morale has been significantly shaken. Fano's offensive operations have inflicted heavy losses on the enemy, with numerous forces of Birhanu Julla's army being decimated. It's reported that the enemy's ranks have been severely disrupted, leaving little room for recovery. The fighting has continued in multiple areas today, as disclosed in recent updates. Meanwhile, the enemy forces are still carrying out attacks on property and civilians, perpetuating their pattern of destruction. In Gojam, Sakala, and the city of Kishabai, during the ongoing battle, many enemy soldiers were killed or severely wounded. The Fano forces successfully surrounded and captured the city. Upon entering the city, Fano forces launched a heavy offensive, capturing the city after dealing a significant blow to the enemy forces. The forces of the enemy, commanded by their leaders, failed to hold their ground. As a result, the city was freed. Many civilians who had been trapped under the enemy control were also safely evacuated by Fano forces. Despite the enemy's effort to launch attacks against Fano, the group successfully executed strategic counterattacks, inflicting considerable losses on the enemy. According to reports from the area, the enemy forces were ambushed in the town of Zerabruk, near the cemetery, where they were destroyed by Fano forces. In Shawa region, the Fano forces, after successfully attacking the enemy's military camp, destroyed over 3 militia groups, causing numerous casualties. Fano forces, under the commander of the Amara Regional Fano Army, launched an operation against the city, defeating the enemy troops who had been holding the city. The enemy soldiers were killed or severely wounded, and many of their weapons were seized by Fano forces. In other parts of the region, enemy soldiers were reported to be committing violence against unarmed civilians, attacking them with brutal forces. Furthermore, the force of Abiy Ahmed's administration and the Ifra and Gadam regions have been destroying private properties in civilian areas, as reported by local witnesses. During their attacks, the military forces not only looted and destroyed civilian properties, but also seized livestock, further contributing to the destruction in the region. Thank you for tuning into this week's insight on TIKUR ANBESA Media. We hope the information has been valuable and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to stay updated with the latest news and analysis. Your support helps us bring you quality content. Stay connected, and we look forward to sharing more next week.